So, this is going to be my first video on PoE on specific builds. Builds that I would recommend giving a shot if you like the way they play. Now, I don't usually go into videos with a script, but I have decided to kind of somewhat plan the way that I'm going to do this video, and the first thing I'm going to do is just show you the build in action, so you can see whether or not you actually want to play said build, rather than explain how it works and then, you see the build play and you go, yeah, that's not for me. Seems like a better way to handle this particular type of content. So, without further ado, let us map. Low-level map, safe map, I'm going to be distracted, but we'll see how it works. So, first things first, I'm going to meditate. Before I start any combat, that doubles my energy shield. Monk can get that from their ascendancy. You're only going to have it at the very end of your playthrough, after your third ascendancy, for reasons I will explain. So that's kind of the basic way that I play. I mark everything across, hit a couple times of ice damage, and everything explodes. Alternatively, I'll do this, and everything explodes. You'll see a lot of things that make everything explode. Now, if that isn't doing it for you, you can also go ahead and hit everything, and it'll explode. Now, with the staff skills up, I have a charge staff up now. I can also hit everything and make it explode. I actually didn't hit it correctly, but I have to punch it first, and then hit it and make it explode. Let me do that correctly. Use your arrow on that. Alright. Need to find a target. I also need to recharge my staff, then find a target. I'll get my charges back. Actually using Flicker Strike this way is a luxury build. Okay. These guys. These guys. And mark these guys. And well, it didn't quite go the way I was hoping. Flicker Strike is a questionable skill. It either is amazing or it's not. Sometimes the AI just does not want to put you where you want to go. I wanted to chain all the way back through those and go all up, but it's mostly for bosses, which I can't really show in this map. I'll probably show a boss at the end, but this is the way it plays. I'll finish the map just so you can see it through the end. I'm just gonna focus on getting that done. I mean, the rares are going to be the only area that you're going to see some sort of actual use of DPS. These are more of a AoE thing. Pretty fearless in these maps, because even though my stats are kind of rudimentary, I know that everybody will die before it's a threat to me, other than rares, and even they will probably die before they're a threat to me. Flicker Strike is... I really like Flicker Strike, but right now we're still missing some crucial elements to actually make it work without it. Like, you can get lucky and get that killed like that, but most of the time, it's just not going to get the job done. going to show 2 ways that you can fight uniques. Or rares, I guess, not uniques. That was unfortunate. I did not want to fight that one. Oh well. So that's the bell. Apparently, we're going on a trip. That is a risk with, that is a risk with Flicker Strike. Don't use it all willy-nilly unless you know that you can tank the map you're in, because you just might go on a journey, and you never know what you're going to warp into while you're doing that. You could be warping into poison, you could be warping into explosions. Again, I know I can tank basically anything in these maps. It's really fun to see Flicker Strike working, though. That's the way Flicker Strike should always be functioning. But you're just very rarely going to see this. I'm rolling 30% chances over and over and over in those maps. And yeah, you're not going to consistently do that. But it's nice when it happens. So, that's the build. You've seen like everything the build has to offer, the different ways it can be played. I only showed the Gathering Storm ice combo once, but I mean, it's the same thing. You punch a pile of mobs, you Gathering Storm into them, and everything dies. It's extremely powerful. The way that this works, it detonates every mob in the area that it gets frozen, and then your aura detonates them when they die when they're frozen, and then this one does shockwaves to every mob it passes through, which then freezes them all, which makes them all deal damage because they are now frozen and dying. The triple combo there, it's a lot of damage for 2 actions. It's probably the strongest burst you have for mobbing. I got some skill points. So, the actual build. Let's get into it. You get a belt, and you get a staff. They're both level 1, you put them on, you never take them off, you're done. Congratulations. You've built this build. And I'm not even joking, that is... Everything else here is just floor gear that I rotate with whatever I find. For me personally, I actually do have to use unset rings, because I have no open skill slots. And I still actually want one more skill slot. I didn't show this because it's not something you can show on this type of content. But yeah, all of this gear, it's good gear for the slots, but it's not like you have to go and get this particular piece of gear. Anything that has decent defensive stats and offensive stats work. You want strength where you can get it, all attributes where you can get it. If you really want to be super good, you're going to have all attributes and strength on your necklace. 30 strength, 22 all attributes. I think it goes up to 25. No, it's 22 the max. I think it goes up to 25. But, yeah, none of this is like, you want these type of stats, but none of it is required. Honestly, you'd probably want a pure evasion set of gloves. The only piece of pure energy shield that you're at. Everything else, pure evasion, and it doesn't have, I'm not saying you have to do that, I'm just saying ideally that's probably what you're going to want because it'll give you the most stats. You can actually go energy shield on the shoes, and you can get a decent amount of energy shield. It works either way. Don't go hybrid. Going hybrid is just, it had the resistances I needed, and I put it on. The stats are just awful, as you can see. You do want to go hybrid on the body armor, and there's a reason for that. Your spirit is based on the total amount of energy shield and evasion rating on your chest armor, and you get more of it from a hybrid than you'll get from either of the pure energy shield or pure evasion armors. At least from what I've seen so far. Maybe you can get more from the other way, but also you do just need some energy shield base for the build to work. So don't be afraid to get energy shield boots. I would really recommend the gloves because I've never seen a good energy shield roll on gloves, but I have seen 300, 400 evasion gloves. So go for the stat that you're going to get the most from that slot, is what I would say. That's more just nitpicky stuff. So the build itself, I showed off this as the first skill I used in the map. I actually should show off this first, just to explain the core of my skills and what they do, and then show the build that makes them work. Again, no script. So Ice Strike is your bread and butter. You get it at 14. You will use it for the entire game. You'll never stop using this. It teleports you to mobs. Or it doesn't teleport you, but it kind of short dashes towards the mob. It basically teleports you. Just be simple here. It basically warps you to the mobs that you're aiming at, and you can just chain it through a pile of mobs, warping from the next mob to the next mob to the next mob, and use it to farm with. You have other options early on if you're not comfortable being in melee range on everything. There's some content, like the first Act 1's last area with the blood mobs that cover the grounded blood. It's a little risky to use this. You might want to use, you just put on a crossbow and shoot them from range, and then get rid of it later. This build works with crossbows. That's another thing I should point out. Almost none of this build, only the stuff I added in at the very end for quarterstaff, is limited to melee. Everything else is omni damage nodes. So you can put on a crossbow on this build, and you can just use a crossbow if you really want to. But it's not, this specific setup is not designed for that anymore. Early game, I think until Act 3, I had a crossbow for mobbing, and I was just using galvanics. It's safe, it's fast, it has good clear speed. And again, all of my damage is just attack damage, not melee damage. Later on, I'm going to get some melee damage now that I'm committed to full melee, but... It's this one? No? Well, I guess not. So it's always an option to use a crossbow then. But we're going to focus on the build I'm on now. Level however it's most comfortable for you to get here. But that's the weak point of the skill. After Act 1 is done, you won't encounter that kind of mechanic all that much, and you can pretty effectively just use Ice Strike. And because of the way Poe2 the Gods works, if you get a 3-socket, it'll be amazing. Even if you only have a 2-socket, go with lightning damage because it gives you the highest average damage, and you're good to go. Again, these 2 pieces of gear, and you're going to breeze through the story and just kind of pick up whatever you find on the ground for every other slot. I don't think I even had rings, or I don't think I had anything but the chest armor. I was just kind of wearing an average one until the end of Act 2. And just from these 2 things, you're very tanky. Let me be clear, you're not going to just be face tanking everything, but you're going to be killing it before it kills you, as long as you play with a little bit of strategy. So, just keep that in mind. You'll have a ton of DPS and a decent chunk of HP, so stack the durability you feel is necessary. Beyond that, the skills. Bell is the next skill. This is going to be actually the first skill you unlock and you just get access to, put it in your bar. You're only really going to use this for bosses. It's extremely good on bosses, but you're not going to mob with it. You can maybe use it on rares. I got throat infection. It's unfortunate. You can use this on rares. It works. It'll kill the rares easily. It'll overkill the rares. You can use it on bosses, and it'll get the job done real quick. Excellent skill for bossing. Keep it on your bar forever. You're always going to want this. It's extremely powerful. Basically, just adds a flat damage. It adds this damage to all of your attacks. And yeah, it's a lot. Now, Shattering Palm, you get very late in the game. What, 50, 60, something like that. It's very late. But the way this skill works is it's another punch skill. If you've used any of the other punch skills, it's the same mechanic. The first skill itself is very weak. If we get face breakers later on, it'll be more interesting. For now, you're not going to get enough damage out of the first hit to do much. However, the second hit is not based on the skill damage, it's based on your staff damage. 334% of your staff damage in AoE. Now, that's where you've got something amazing. You Shattering Palm attack of enemies, it marks all of them with the ice, and then to detonate it, you have to hit them with ice damage. Now, you've got a nice source of ice damage here, and everything else on my setup has some ice damage built into it to activate Shattering Palm. So you don't need that much, but you do need some ice damage to activate this. Now, I should actually explain the supports I have. This one should be pretty straightforward. Attack speed, more attack speed and damage, and penetration for cold damage, because this is all cold damage. The bell is just damage, damage, damage. Just as much flat damage as you can get, because the bell can't be slowed down. It's based on how quickly you hit it. Staggering Palm. This one, you have some options. I went with Ice Bite because basically staggering the ice explosion from it. It's not staggering, it's shattering. Staggering is this one. But shattering is... the ice damage will always freeze when you detonate bodies. So you'll always get Ice Bite when you pop them. And Magnified Effect to just hit more enemies when you mark them. And +1 Skull Gems because I had nothing else. Like, that's honestly the only reason this is here. I had nothing else to put in that slot. I should cover the skill as well, because this is a skill that you will use early game. So it's not that functional, if I'm being honest. For this skill, I used Devastation, I used Overpower, and I put Physical Mastery on it very far in the end game. You might as well put it on early game if you have a level 3 support. Honestly, there's other things that are better in level 3 support, but if you have a spare one and you have nothing else to use it on, Physical Mastery. So the way this skill works is, if you played Warrior, they have like Bone Shatter or something like that. It's the same thing. It's for bossing, you can use it for mobbing. This is a better version of that skill. When you get mobs to like 70% stun bar or so, you'll see they'll get a yellow icon, a sandy yellow-white icon above their head. It's not an icon, but it's a circle, glowing bubble. That means that you can Staggering Palm them and they will become heavy stunned, which is different than normal stun. It makes them like fall down on their back or fall down on one knee and take a minute to stand up. And with Devastation on, it also breaks their armor. Armor break in this game is huge for a lot of bosses. You'll just see a huge increase in your damage. You'll want to do that when you can. And also, the heavy stun makes the boss stay stunned longer, and you get these projectiles. And the projectiles are obviously attack percentage, so it's just 103% bonus damage on all of your attacks. And it also will ring the bell twice. Wait, I got a message. It'll ring the bell twice, and just... assistance is required, apparently. Well, I might have a boss to go and beat up. We'll get there when we get there. Give me a moment. But the stagger skill, when you use that, you get those extra hits. They double up the bell damage, and they also give you a window to do DPS without worrying about retaliation. And you'll use it early game if you kind of focus this build into one type of skill use rather than having all of these skills. You'll probably want that on your bar just for bosses. Now, back to the skills I'm currently using. The reason this isn't in my bar is I have no extra slots at all, even with the unset rings. So you're honestly going to have to pick one build unless you want to roll unset rings like I do. Which is perfectly fine. You can lose both of these skills, or you can lose both of these skills. The build works without all of these skills. It works best with all of them. The charge staff, this is very late game. I went to this. You can go to it earlier though. You need to have that node that I showed here. You need to have this node, and you need to have this aura. And that'll get you charges for free for just going to the mobs. You can use some of the skills that generate power charges. I wouldn't recommend it. It's too much hassle to actually manually generate your charges. Go with these two. Now, that'll give you charges. Every charge will give you, I believe, flat damage to your staff, so it's very good. And I know it gives me a massive increase in my DPS on my skills, and it also shoots out a shockwave every time you attack, just like Staggering Palm, which is only 89%, but it's free. You basically have it up all the time. You don't have to stun an enemy, it's just free damage. And the buff lasts for like 50 seconds. So it's very convenient. The supports I used on it are just kind of flat damage a little bit, persistence to have it last longer. This does absolutely nothing on it, honestly. I'm actually going to move that down here. Actually, this might work out. I'm improving my build right here. Okay, so that's an improvement. So there you go. Made the build a little better. In theory, this would proc when you kill enemies with the waves, but they are rarely the last thing to hit the enemy, so they don't count as killing them. This one actually does occasionally kill the enemy, so it's better. That's charge staff. You have to have power charges to use it. You use the power charges, they give you a buff. The more power charges you have, the better the buff is. Solid skill gives you that wave attack. The wave attack activates the bell more times, and it just kind of adds a little bit of free damage to your normal attacks. Great skill. You get it relatively early. I would actually recommend this one as, like these two, I would recommend as like your go-to skills for killing mobs. Now, that does require you to have this one, but you can drop this, that's it. These two, you just drop. Everything else you kind of don't. But Flicker Strike, for what I have it set up to do, it's my bossing skill. I've got Culmination. The more times I hit the enemy, you can read it, it's just 2% more damage for every combo stack I have. And Perpetual Charge saves your charges. Post-combat, just a source of damage. I'm running out of support gens that give me damage, so I'm using whatever I got. Now, the way that I use this skill is I work the boss down, get them probably frozen once, maybe twice, and cook my power charges so I have some. Hopefully have 5 power charges. Once I get about 50 to 100 combo, I then activate this and kill the boss immediately. So like half HP to none. And the way I do that is I put the bell down and then activate this, and it'll attack the boss, attack the bell, attack the boss, attack the bell. Right? It just goes back and forth between the two. And because I have AoE on all the attacks, it'll hit the bell twice on every pass. And because it casts that extra wave of damage from charged staff, it'll be 4 times every time it does a pass. And it's a ton of damage. It's very fast when you use power charges, so it's just a huge burst skill for a single target. You can kind of mob with it, I showed you that. I wouldn't recommend it. We need another source of power charge generation that'll allow you to generate charges while using Flicker Strike alone. It doesn't really 4-socket it, put freeze on it, and then like maybe you can get it to freeze, but as of this moment, it doesn't really work as a solo grinding skill. Gathering Storm, that's the dash. It's a perfect timing skill. You'll get muscle memory to be able to use it perfectly after a while, but early on it can feel kind of bad to use, especially if you use Window of Opportunity, which makes it even tighter. But it does a ton of damage. Apparently, it's time to kill a boss. Moment. I don't think that is accurate. Huh. That'd be weird if they made it so you can't go with other people on this particular boss fight. That would make Viper a very dangerous boss fight. I think it'll let me go once I go on the pass. We'll see. This is only the active one. Oh, I see. That's weird, but I'll take it. And let me warp to him now. So this kind of works out, because I can show the boss fight. Hopefully not die.
Halt! Your rampage ends here!
Don't worry.
It'd be a sad day to die in
This is all just a misunderstanding.
non-cruel.
Which one of you activated the gate?
I'm strong.
Which one of you is a Val blood?
Why, that was me.
Oh,
of
spoiler
course.
alert,
I
you know,
am Alva the Lion,
story things are happening
treasure
right now.
hunter extraordinary.
Take her! Bring her to Doriani. As for you, I will pay back every drop of Val blood you have spilled.
Actually, someone strong in the party.
You will fall before us! I shall crush you!
Swamp ball. Swamp ball before I did that. Yeah, I did not do that boss fight justice. I should have done a lot of things differently. That's my WP. What is this? Oh, I actually do know this was. Alright. So. To finish up my skills, that's bossing when you expect to one-shot the boss and then you don't. I didn't actually like go all out on that because I really thought she would die. The multiplayer adjustments are very, very generous to the bosses, but anyway, Gathering Storm, you've seen it. I'm just going to show it one more time just so that you can kind of see the timing on it, decide whether you want to use it. So that's the perfect timing, that's the failed timing. And go too soon. Perfect timing is pretty tight, but once you use it for a while, you'll have no problems doing it, even in a pile of mobs when, you know, you might be panicked a little bit. You just need to stay calm when you're using it. It's apparently lagging on my stream a little bit to have all that lightning. It's a very powerful skill. Don't underestimate it. It's not good on single targets. I mean, it's okay on single targets, but it's really good when you can make a big pile and dash into them, because every time you hit an enemy, it can show you in the damage sheet, So the dash itself does high damage, like obviously. Now, every time you hit an enemy, you do this shockwave in a 2-meter radius around that enemy, and they can overlap, so you can shotgun effectively with the skill in AoE. Oh, they nerfed it. Interesting. This was not here before. This is new, so you can only get 8 of these attacks. It's still very strong, but it's not nearly as strong as it used to be. Interesting. Well, I just learned something new, apparently. There's no limit on this one. So this one is now far stronger than this one. The more mobs you put into the pile with the Shattering Palm, the more damage you're going to get. The more you know. So this skill is actually even less needed. I still have it because it'll also dash through mobs, and a lot of the times while I'm doing my palm attack, it'll pull me into like the center of the pile instead of the outside. And if that happens, then I kind of just roll to a wall and immediately activate that and dash out. More like that. But yeah, there's knowing that you can fail it, I would understand if people don't want to use it. You'll get used to it if you actually it's just, it's really dangerous to be in hardcore and then like you roll away and you fail your dash and you dash right back into the pile, and now the only hope you have is spin to win and hope that you live. Or you could just escape and Alt F4 basically. You escape and respawn the checkpoint or go to login if you're really worried. But it can be dangerous, it can also be a lifesaver. I find it to be more useful than it is harmful. Up to you whether or not that one is worth your time. I would expect most players probably won't even have this on their bar. It'll be one of the sacrifice skills. Same with Flicker Strike. I mean, you saw that even without my staff and without any other buffs, Flicker Strike was still doing considerably more damage than Ice Strike on Viper. So, there is an argument for the damage potential of it, but you have to play around the mechanics and you actually have to... the only reason I didn't actually fully enable it is because I thought Viper was going to die in one hit from my dub. Like, I wasn't really mentally prepared for her to actually live a couple attacks, or to be able to hurt. I mean, she did like 300 energy shield with a glancing shot. She could have killed me. Surprising again. I did not think I was still that weak, or she was that strong. Apparently I am. But, Grim Feast, this is going to be your first aura that you get. You can read what it does. Grim Remnant spawn, they heal you energy shield. You can go over your maximum energy shield to double. So basically, that's meditation without meditation. Meditation is nice because you can start the map and get the same benefit, and then use the Grim Feast to keep you topped up. But otherwise, you'll typically be regenerating more energy than you lose by picking up the spirits from Grim Feast. Very good skill. I recommend it on honestly any character you're playing that uses energy shield. If you use energy shield, use this skill. Until they nerf it into the ground, which I'm sure they will, they're gonna have to nerf this some way or another. Or they're gonna have to buff the other skills. I don't care which, honestly. I'm fine either way. But the armor version of it is dog shit. There is no evasion version of it. This is the evasion version of it, or the closest to it, and it's its own thing that's totally different. Not related to hitting mobs at all, just it's a good skill, but it's the equivalent of this one. When you do get hit, you'll do an AoE, and that AoE you can mod it to stun. It already stuns, I believe, but you can mod it to like add debuffs on the enemies, so like if you do get hit, it might save your life by knocking back and stunning and maiming and blinding the enemies that were going to kill you. But mainly you're using it for the 18% more evasion. So, you know, just flat bonus. Now the Heralds, Herald of Ice is part of my whole explosion combo with Shattering Palm. You're going to definitely want to be using this one. It makes the build that much better. Like, Shattering Palm does a lot of damage, Herald of Ice does about half as much for free. You don't have to do any actions. Like, you can technically just be flicker striking through packs, and this will be killing them. Thunder, I'm only using it for, like, I'm literally just using it for the 50% more lightning damage. It's good. You need to actually work to enable it. I don't have the ability to land shocks effectively. Only Gathering Storm applies shocks for me. I mean, I can apply shocks on any attack, but realistically, this has 100% to apply shocks to the shocking ground that it leaves behind. Will shock all enemies. I have that with the Overcharge. By the way, I didn't show these, but Culmination, Petrocharge, I showed that one, but I didn't show this one. Word of Opportunity, Momentum, and Overcharge. This just makes your shocks from this skill deal 35% damage instead of 20. And if you can actually get shocks on the tree if you want to like go all in on Gathering Storm, and you can get it up to like over 100%, I believe. You can get an insane number on shock damage bonus. And then, since it's shocking ground, it'll always apply to any target that's standing on it, so you can just guarantee that whatever you're marking is not going to take that bonus damage. It's very good. But, anyway, if you're doing that, Herald of Thunder will be going off. It is pretty good damage. Every target that you hit up to 3 targets per activation will have that 186% more damage. Solid if you enable it. I don't have it enabled, so it's just here for the passive bonus, honestly. When it goes off, cool. I need to actually adjust my build to apply shocks, which I can easily do. I had this node before, which was a good chunk, and there's a whole bunch of nodes that support shock damage or shock application. I mean, this whole ring has all of them. They're around here. I'm not sure where they are right off the top of my head. I know this is a set of them. Or this. This is. They're in this general area. This one. They're all on this particular line, or right next to it. So you can enable shock if you want to. It's an option. You can do that. I wouldn't recommend it personally. It's very good, but you give up a lot on this build. If you want to do something like that, you're going to not want to be melee. You'll have to give up too much. I would go something like Spark. A lot of people playing Spark, and high shock chance Spark is very good. But it's an option. You could try to make this build do that. It should function to some degree. Because the skill is still strong in its own right if you build for it. Even with that nerf of 8 shockwaves per dash. I mean, there's no limit on how many times you can dash, so if you get the timing down, every single one of these 8 attacks. So, no, it's still perfectly fine. But that pretty much covers everything. Luckily gear is just straight 2 items, like nothing else. I mean, you want strength on your other stuff, but other than that, you get defensive on your defensive gear and you're good. You've seen how the build plays. If you want to try to follow it through, good luck. Early game can be a little bit risky, but once you get to like Act 3, you should be rolling pretty good. And from there, you'll just steamroll through honestly everything up to maps. The only content I had a little bit of trouble with, and to be clear, when I fought Doriani in Cruel, I had negative 10% fire, negative 10% ice res, and he does both of those damage types a lot. I think I only had 6% lightning res. I have since been able to fix that from map drops. And it was a risky fight, but it was a safe fight. I didn't get one-shot by any attacks. I dodged the obvious one-shots like the laser beam and stuff, but like the stuff that's hard to dodge wasn't immediately killing me. I had time to react. And it was a safe fight. If I had had proper gear, like at this point I could go back there and slap him, no problem. But yeah, I have a couple more builds that I'll show. This one is probably my my magnum opus so far, but it's not going to be. This is a pretty good build I threw together, and it works, and I'm happy with it. Some of my other builds are like they work and they're not good, but they function, and I'm satisfied with them. This one I'm happy with. When I really get serious about PoE2, it's going to be... Do I not have a skill check? I do. It's going to be the Primal. When we get these skills, that's when I'm going to actually, like, pull out a calculator and min-max the shit out of my build and make a perfect Primal build, unless it's just completely unplayable. But we saw the early release videos and stuff from the Primal skills where, like, you transform into the wolf and you jump on them and do the 2 slashes. Like, it's all transformation skills. And I like that whole idea of gameplay, like a druid kind of, but not really, a mini druid class. So if it's anything like what they showed, this is going to be my main class. I'm going to make a perfect build on it. It will be the best build there is, guaranteed. Whether or not I can afford the best items, I will know the best way to play the class. I'm going to math it out. Everything else I've been, like, the crossbows I kind of liked. I have a build I'll show. It works. But I'll show that one later. I tried the summoner as well. I'll show that build. I wasn't super sold on the summoner, and I kind of gimped myself on that one, so just fair warning if you're waiting on the summoner video. I'm a Chronomancer summoner, and I'm going to spoil this right now. Chronomancer's Ascendancy makes your summon respawn time take 30% longer, or like maybe even 50% longer than it should. It's maybe fixed. I don't know if they're going to fix it. The summoner debuff, that your summons are dead, you get a debuff, and when the debuff runs out, they automatically resummon now. And it's a buff, not a debuff. So anything that increases buff time instead increases the time before your summons respawn. So my summoner is gimped by that. It actually got killed out of hardcore, and I kept it just because I didn't want to make another one, because, again, another spoiler, Summoner is good. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people say Summoner is just too weak. Summoner is perfectly serviceable for what it does, but you are beholden to the AI doing what it needs to do correctly. And the AI is not very I, it's more just A. It's artificial, not intelligent. There's some bosses where I was watching my summons just literally spin in circles and do nothing. And that's why I decided not to remake another one in hardcore and just keep my one in softcore for a video later down the line. It's a very slow grinding class. Now, I do know the Infernalist. I believe that is a summoner-based class. I didn't play it because everyone was saying it was OP, and I didn't want to play. I didn't want my first playthrough to be an OP class. Like a class that objectively breaks the game. I wanted to actually kind of experience a bit of a challenge, a bit of risk. So, I didn't play the Infernalist. I believe, from what I've heard, the Infernalist was a summoner, and I assume their Ascendancy made the summons much better than they really are in some way or another that made them good. I don't know for sure. I'm just stating that I know people have been playing summons. Summoner is a very safe class, is the best I can say about it. But other than that, I tried the mace skills. I don't think I'll share a build for these. I have a build that's, unless these two skills are amazing, I can't get them yet on my other character, but I'll grind up and get to them, and I'll test them. So far, everything from here to here has been not good. That's all I can describe it as. It's all been not good. Very slow attack animations without any damage to justify their speed. Like, just for a quick example, the preface of that build, that potential build video, if I make one, 45% of base speed, 233% damage. Now let's just go ahead and compare that to Tempest Flurry. 140% of base speed and 140% damage. Now, if you do some head math real quick, you'll realize that this one is like twice as strong as Perfect Strike. And Perfect Strike has like a whole mechanic with it where you can get double damage out of it. Perfect Strike, more than double damage, but this slows down your attack speed even more to actually wait for the Perfect Strike. Like, this is just to like press the button and let it go and to do a short swing. If you want to do a Perfect Strike, it takes a very long time to fully wind up for the Perfect Strike, and the payoff is not there. Perfect Strike should have a damage multiplier closer to this, not 900. And even if it was like this, it probably wouldn't feel particularly good, in my opinion. We'll see how that character goes. For now, I wouldn't hold your breath for a mace video. Like, I'm just telling you, it's probably not going to happen. It's a tanky build. You can be very hard to kill, but you're going to be sitting there slapping the enemy for 10 times as long as you need to, which just, in theory, would be fine if this wasn't a grinding game. In a grinding game, you do not want to be taking 3 times as long to kill mobs, obviously. Even if it guarantees your safety, you're going to take a decade and a half to get anywhere. It also hurts that armor makes you slow. You're already slow, and armor makes you lose even more movement speed percent. So that's just some basic information. With that, I think I've covered everything you'll need to know to get started, and if you want to follow this build, you should have a pretty good outline. With that, I'll see you in the next one, assuming that I have another build worth showing. Later.